Happy November and happy fall as we have episode 49 of LMR Live from the University of Mississippi. Are we excited? So, I'm Nancy Mariah Balach, and I get to host this show, but it is only possible because of a lot of amazing people doing a lot of amazing things, and you're going to meet them later. But what do we do at LMR? We combine education with entertainment, mash them together, and what do? Edutainment. Are we ready for some edutainment? You're going to have to participate. You're going to have to. So, one of the things that I love about fall is a tradition of collaboration with one of our partners on campus, the Sarah Isom Center for Women and Gender Studies. And when it's fall and we combine these forces, it means it is Sarah Fest time. So today's guest is here because of that collaboration. Our artist today is poet and educator Dr. Caroline Young. She's been on campus for an intensive with a select cohort with a theme, opening up the art of social engagement. We're going to learn more about this cohort in a little bit. But let's learn about Caroline Young before we welcome her out on this set. Dr. Young is a poet and educator living in Athens, Georgia, a lecturer in the University of Georgia English Department. She also serves as the site director for Common Good Atlanta's higher education program at Whitworth Women's Facility in Hartwell, Georgia. She says that she has been teaching in incarcerated spaces since 2017, and it has transformed her pedagogy. Quote, "It calls into service my full range of experience and skills, enforces my eagerness to keep learning, and affirms the necessity of creating safe spaces in any learning environment." Dr. Young fosters ongoing conversation between her UGA and Whitworth student classrooms through community-facing writing and art collaborations. Dr. Young was the recipient of the 2024 Service Learning Teaching Excellence Award from the University of Georgia, and in 2023 she received the prestigious Silver Medal Award from the Southeastern Museums Conference for her curated exhibit, Art is a Form of Freedom. The exhibit was a collaborative effort between Dr. Young, the women of Whitworth, the Department of Corrections, alumni of the nonprofit Common Good Atlanta, and the Georgia Museum of Art. Caroline is extraordinary. She is generous. She is profound. In my opinion, she personifies why we do the humanities. Let's put our hands together and welcome Dr. Young. Welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Have a seat. So we're going to kick off, before we dive into things, we're going to kick off with some 3 questions that the team has put together that we just want to get to know you a little bit, all right?
Okay.
So first question, in truth be told, is who is your favorite author?
The easy answer is Gertrude Stein.
All right. Mm-hmm. All right. I like. Let's go to question number 2. What inspired you to start writing?
Silence.
Do I just let that one word be the answer? Or do I ask more? I ask more. Do tell.
What inspired me to start writing, I think every human needs to find a way for their voice to emerge from their bodies. And
yes.
Writing was a very late language for me. I danced first, I wrote for others, and then I realized, like, I finally found a way to get my own voice out.
I love it.
Really
I love it. That's a great answer. Last one. Where is your favorite place to write?
Walking.
Ooh, I like that.
Well, and don't fact check me on this, but I believe it's correct. I was told by a reliable source that the brain moves at about 3 miles an hour, as does the body when we walk, and that is why they sync up so nicely.
Interesting.
If you want to clear your head, take a walk.
I'm a big fan of walks. As a singer, that's how I test myself if I really have things memorized. I walk in the tempo of the music, and if I can do the lyrics without actually singing or saying them, then I know it.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for playing Truth Be Told. Just a little dive inspired by Marcel Proust.
Did I win?
You win. You're always a winner. You're always a winner.
Okay.
Forever. Oh, and I just lost my microphone. So this is going to be interesting. All right. We're going to gauge this back. Hello.
What's that?
Kind of show. We'll have to have a special rating. Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. Am I back?
What's up there?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, real moment, a human moment. All right, first off, I want to talk about your education and then jump to your first job. So, BA, Art History,
Yes.
Boston University, Master of Fine Arts, Poetry, Queen's University of Charlotte, and then Doctorate, English Lit and Creative Writing, University of Georgia.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So what was your first job?
As in first job?
First.
Oh, this was actually great. I was a filing clerk for Hershey Chocolate Company's shipping delivery place basically in Doraville, Georgia. So it's where all the chocolate came in, and I don't want to tell you how long chocolate sits in a warehouse, but I basically was the person that filed all the bills of lading.
Oh my goodness. So that was
Big
first
deal.
job. Then what led to the work at the TV station?
Well, I'm an idealist. I was an art history major. It was a recession. And then, and honestly, I realized I could only get a job in an art gallery and didn't want to sell art for a living, and I needed and I quit a restaurant job gloriously, and then I was a temp, honestly. I could type, and so I wound up at Turner Broadcasting. That's how I got there.
And how was your time there?
It was exploratory.
Okay.
I was looking around a lot. I was like, okay, everyone here is under 40. This could be a good first job, but apparently they get rid of the old people, so don't get comfortable. I saw a lot of weird executives getting hired and fired in weird, interesting ways, but I was surrounded by a lot of really cool, creative people. They were throwing a lot of toys at us, and I got to do a 16-year, I call it my master's degree in multimodal writing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So when did the moment come? I mean, you have this job, you're established within it, there's security within, I'm assuming a good paycheck. How did you decide? What was the epiphany to pivot from that, and how did you?
I don't know, there was ever an epiphany, but I always knew I wasn't meant to be there. It's like you ever visit a place and it's really wonderful and you're enjoying everybody, but you're like, why am I here?
Yes.
And I had a workaholic boss, and I thought, she's just gonna die doing this. And I was kind of like, is this how I want my life to end? So I just talked to the universe a lot because I really didn't know what I was going to do. I think it was my father at one point said, do you want to go back to school? And that was mind-blowing because that's just not part of our family history. People didn't get advanced degrees. And I was like, oh, that's an option. So I think maybe that was it.
That was it?
Yeah.
That was it? So yesterday you showed the slide of sort of jumping out of the car.
Yes.
Yes.
Always.
Can you elaborate on that? That visual?
A lot of people, I think people can relate. Sometimes you can do a lot of things well. And then people get really excited. They're like, oh my gosh, this person can do this well. I know what Caroline should do. And then I was a people pleaser, and so I was like, okay, well, I can do this for a while. But there's something inside of me that kind of knew I was performing what they wanted me to do. And so I always kind of had to find the opportune moment to bail, when it was starting to get close. The prime example, and I don't know if I talked about this yesterday, was I had convinced my father's business executive friends. I was art history major, y'all. I know the jokes, but they all were very concerned about my well-being and what are you going to do with that? And I developed a lie. I was like, I'm going to get an MBA and I'm going to work for Sotheby's, an auction house. And then they would stop asking me questions. But then it got to where my dad's like, well, you need to take microeconomics. And the lie was getting bigger, and that's when you have to jump out of the car.
So how was that moment when you sort of, wizard came out from behind to say, okay, actually, this is what's going on?
I let them sort of figure it out. I just kind of started to disappear. I don't know how I do it, but I disappoint them in some silent way. And then I'm sidle over somewhere else. And then he had a friend who was an artist who I think, and he worked for an art foundation who paints in hospitals. It's really in alignment with what I would want to do. But they kept trying to get me to market. They wanted me to go into corporations and talk about the art. And I'm like, this is the worst fit. Can y'all not see me? And so I let them down. Like, I think I went to the interview and then just didn't say a word and walked out. And they just were like, oh, she's done that again.
Career-wise, when is the moment that you really felt you were where you were supposed to be?
It was like May 17th, 2018, and it was the first day I was sitting at Whitworth Women's Facility, and I was in the trailer where they had the class I was about to teach for the first time, and I was in there locked in because it was an emergency count and nobody could get to class. And then they finally got there and we had to run the 3-hour class in 1 hour. But yeah, that was the day I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is why I got my PhD.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So can you share with us a little bit about what Common Good Atlanta is and the work that it does?
Yeah, Common Good Atlanta was started by a single grad student at Georgia State University. She wanted to teach in prison and she didn't realize that there was no higher education in Georgia prisons. And so when she found that out, she wrote to 13 wardens. One of them wrote back and said, okay, you can come in and teach a class. And they called her the lady with the books. And I think she went in there on her own for 2 years, and then a friend of mine joined her. And very slowly, this tiny kind of cabal of people has grown to we're now in 7 sites across 7 prison sites in Georgia, and we are contractors with the state. And they give us a lot of freedom that they don't give anybody else, honestly. It's kind of amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you first get that position? I mean, how did that come to be?
My first day at Georgia Tech, this postdoctorate that I agreed to do, Sarah, the woman who started this program, I didn't know her, was sitting next to me, and the president of Georgia Tech was in the room. And she was grilling him about the Ivory Tower and its connection to the community. And I'm thinking, like, who's this cool person? And so I asked her, I was like, hey, like, what's up with you? And she said, oh, you know, she's very, very modest. And she's like, oh, I teach in prisons with my partner, Bill Taft. And I had known Bill Taft for 20 years. He played in a band with my boyfriend. We worked in television together. And I looked at her and said, Bill Taft is a friend of mine, and he's kind of famous. And she's all like, oh, yeah, you know, everyone's a friend of Bill's. And then she ran up to me at the cocktail whatever that night, and with a phone in her hand. She's like, you really know Bill? And I did. I went home. I was driving home in my car because I didn't really know why I was at Georgia Tech either. And I told my sister on the phone, I said, I know I am at Georgia Tech now. I was like, I think I'm going to work in prisons.
And what was the reaction to that?
Cool.
Cool.
My sister always like, whatever you want to do, Caroline.
Whatever you do, that's
Just
great.
don't jump out of the car.
So I want to jump to the project, Art is a Form of Freedom. Can you tell us a little bit about that project? Yeah, just starting there.
Yeah, so I did a lot of moving around. After my PhD, I figured out Common Good was sort of the gravity, the center of my universe. And by the time I got the one job, which I kept asking for at UGA, that opened up for me. I had been working with Common Good long enough to know that one of my goals was to figure out a way to do some collaboration between UGA and Whitworth now that I was sort of settled. And I, again, was an art history major. They have a beautiful museum there, and we teach a humanities program, but resources are really limited, particularly with art history, because there are very strict restrictions on what kind of books can go into prison. And if anyone here has ever studied art history, you do understand, like, the human body is part of it, and you'd have to rip every page out of all those textbooks.
Interesting.
So I reached out, well, first I decided to make a class. I was like, okay, y'all can I have a class that's gonna do these things? And then reached out to the curator of education, and she was a service learning fellow, so I knew she would be behind this kind of work. And what we wanted to do, they have an archive. You know, about 15,000 works stay in a vault most of the time in a museum. And we were like, you know, the public doesn't even get to see these works. Well, let's kind of mine the vault, pull these out, and take them into the prison. And so we built this deconstructed textbook that what happened is just people kept seeing things and going, that looks like an exhibit. Oh, maybe you can't, because we asked for an exhibit, and they were like, no. And then they were like, oh, that looks like an exhibit, maybe we could. And then just doors over 2 years, started opening up.
So the work that was in the museum was shared with the women in Whitworth.
Yes.
And then what was the next step after they were experiencing this artwork?
So when I brought the works into the prison, we spent about a year and a half doing writing exercises around the work. And then slowly they had to make, we showed every single piece. We actually laid them out on a table at Whitworth so we could have like an art exhibit, an art exhibition. And so every resident at Whitworth went through with a sheet of paper and they voted on the works that they liked.
Every member?
Every member, 500 people. Wow. And then we took that information back to the classroom, and the women in the classroom, we kind of honed it down to about 40 favorite works. And then what we had to do is hand all their writing and the 40 works they chose over to the curator. The room was only so big, so she had to sort of decide which works they wrote the most about and how we could fit it in there. But then what she did was really cool. To ensure that all 40 works were represented, they made a book, a color book in the room that had all of their writing, so people could take the book and open it up and read all of their work, even stuff that didn't make it on the wall.
How difficult is it to create an environment of willing vulnerability when in the classroom, either classroom, Georgia or Whitworth? I mean, it just seems to me, in the little bit I know of you, you are incredible at bringing down the barriers and walls so people do feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. And that was one of my favorite former students. She's now a good friend and an activist on the outside. She's like, Caroline tricks you. She's just like, she just makes, like, you don't even realize you're doing the thing that you say you're not going to do. And all I really do is just, like, I give them a prompt and give them the freedom to respond to the prompt in any way that they're comfortable doing it. And I don't know. I think what happens, maybe a few people get brave and then it gets sort of contagious.
Yeah, yeah. But you're able to create that environment where that can, you know, be contagious and be a catalyst.
We were reading the work yesterday, and I'm trying to figure out what it is, and I think a lot of it is that there's no big lecturing and pointing at other poems, and there's no comparison, there's no sense of what it needs to be, and so they're just sort of, everyone's writing the purest truth on the page, and it's just, that in itself is just really beautiful.
If anyone wanted to learn more about the art as a form of freedom, how could they? I mean,
well,
I know there's a great article. Is there?
Oh, I could give you a link. One of my students, one of my student classes, they made actually a 27-minute film about it. It's sitting on my very personal Vimeo page, Vimeo, I don't know how you say that. Vimeo?
Would you be willing to, Vimeo, would
Yeah,
you
I
be
would be
willing to
happy
share
to
that?
share it, yeah.
I think that'd be great. I
Yeah.
think it'd be great just to give us a glimpse into it. So for you, what is the biggest thing, you're not gonna like this question, but I'm gonna ask anyways. What is the biggest thing you gain from having these teaching experiences?
Oh, no, I love this question. Because, right, we all have to get something out of what we do.
Totally.
I feel properly pulped.
I like that.
I mean, right?
Yeah. That's something we all want, right? Yes? Maybe?
Anyone?
Maybe?
I mean, we're going to get pulped, but I'd like to be properly pulped.
Properly pulped.
Like, really make a good juice.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think is the greatest impact on the Whitworth class that you've? What are your results? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's probably different for everybody, but I know that they are very one of the sweetest things is there is a mural now at Whitworth. And one of our Whitworth students, part of her philosophy paper is the language on the mural. And they're just incredibly proud of their voices, as they should be.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, I want to talk more about all this, but we always play a game on LMR Live. Today is a little different. It's going to be more of story writing inspired by Caroline Young. We'll do this in a moment. So we are going to play some Mad Libs, and we are going to have a little fun with the story Where the Wild Things Are. Do we all know what Mad Libs are? Yes? Okay, so I'm going to go through a list really quickly. I don't want you to overthink it, Caroline. I just want you to give answers here. And Ben and Benton are going to be collecting your answers. Ooh, set the mood. Okay. All right, you ready? Animal Halloween costume.
Beaver.
Family member.
Mom.
Action verb.
Boogie.
Method of personal transport.
Moped.
Zooming sound effect.
Wow.
Amount of time.
4.
Longer amount of time.
40.
Adjective.
Sweet.
What would you say if you stubbed your toe?
Yowza.
Sound someone makes when they're angry. Something you'd say instead of stop.
Go.
Scariest thing a 5-year-old could do.
Become president?
Become president. I don't know. Title for head of state.
Master.
Master. Something you'd say to start a party.
Fire.
Something else you'd say instead of stop.
Peace.
Punishment for partying too hard.
A hug.
Sad adverb.
Bless my soul. That's not an adverb.
It's all right. Word for far away.
Galaxy.
Favorite food.
Popcorn.
Title for head of state.
The loo.
Action verb.
Break down.
Profession of love.
Mon chéri.
Soap opera goodbye.
Darling.
Adjective.
Greasy.
Spooky sound effect. Scary sound effect.
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
Method of personal transport.
Hovercraft.
And vehicle sound effect. All right, we're going to give our little colleagues here a moment to get all these ducks in a row, and then we're going to shift and we're going to read this story back. Do you recall the book Where the Wild Things Are? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Something like that.
I don't know, when we were figuring out what the game should be, I don't know, we kept just coming back to this idea of poetry or creating something, and then they wanted this one, which I think was cool. Who in the house likes this book? All right, I see some hands. I see some hands. Yes. All right. How are we doing, team?
Almost there.
We're so close. All right, well, you're getting your ducks in a row.
Spelling challenges.
Yeah, well, if we go a little rogue on it, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. While we're waiting for them with this, you talked yesterday about risks in the classroom, and right now I feel like we're taking a risk with this game, which is good. How do you deal with that as an instructor?
How do you not? I just if I'm not risking something, why should I ask anyone else to?
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. Thank you, Maya. All right, Benton. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. My analogy on life is that life is an amusement park, and it's different rides at different points. Oh. And I do like, thrill rides, but just sometimes you have to get off the thrill rides and get on the merry-go-round for a while, and sometimes we do enter the haunted house, but you eventually have to come out. Anyways, I won't bore you with my philosophy on life. All right, here we go. Oh, more mood music.
It's a tender story.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Great work, Benton. All right. The night Max wore his beaver and made mischief of his own kind and another, his mom called him Wild Thing, and he said,
I'll boogie you up.
So he was sent to bed without boogieins anything. That very night in Max's room, a forest grew and grew and grew until his ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world all around. And an ocean tumbled by with a moped for Max. And he sailed off through the night and day. And and out of 4 and almost over a 40 to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their sweet roars.
Yowza!
And gnashed their sweet teeth, and rolled their sweet eyes, and showed their sweet claws, till Max said,
No!
And tamed them with the magic trick of become president. And they were frightened, and called him the most wild thing of all, and made him the master of all wild things.
And now, cried Max, fire!
Dance break. All right, dance break. Okay. Peace, Max said, and hug. And Max, the king of all wild things, was, bless my soul, and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Then all around, from galaxy, he smelled popcorn. So he gave up being the Lou of where the wild things are. But the wild things cried,
Oh, please don't go, we'll break down you up, mon chéri.
and Max said,
Darling.
the wild things roared their greasy roars and gnashed their greasy teeth and rolled their greasy eyes and showed their greasy claws. But Max stepped into his private hovercraft and waved goodbye. And into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him, and it was still hot. Scene. Very nice, Caroline. Very nice. I did not know the dance break was going to be in there. That was a surprise to me, too.
That's always fun.
Thank you, team. I don't think I did my best, but
Love a
anyways, we'll
risk.
go with it. A lot of risk. You gotta go for it. Go for it. Very nice, Ben Curry, on creating that and putting that together. We appreciate it. All right. Oh, you want more dancing? All right, more dancing. So I want to shift. I want to talk about the Sarah Fest Artist in Residency program. So this residency program has a goal of giving students the unique opportunity to learn from working professional artists. It's the 5th residency program for us. It's the 4th year. This year we had a select group of a cohort of undergraduates, graduate students, and a faculty member. This year, as it unfolded, it just became very special and very personal, an opportunity to explore what it means to open up as an artist without your name, to create art and to engage with art as an act of community building. So for the past so many days, Caroline has been working with this cohort in group and in small session, but leading up to the arrival of Caroline, whatever the cohort submitted was installed in Meet Gallery. A huge shout out to Bryce and the staff and Department of Art and Art History for hosting this. But during the week, their works have been on exhibit for our community to enjoy, in addition to what you shared back at Whitworth. This year, we did it a little differently with the event at the beginning, and now the work of the cohort is happening. Again, it's very personalized, and the overall theme being opening up the art of social engagement. So it's very appropriate right now to invite a few people to join us up here. I want to ask that Frankie, Alex, and Ben come on up and join us as we talk a little bit about the Sarah Fest Artists in Residence program. Hands together! Come on.
I lost mine.
You lost yours. We've got a theme going. We're just, I don't know. They're jumping. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Alex, will you tell us a little bit about what you submitted and what is in the gallery right now? Because if you're close by, you can still go see the exhibit today. And I highly recommend it. It's fabulous. Alex.
Yeah, so I submitted 2 poems. So the first poem I submitted for Sarah Fest this year is in honor of a family friend who passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. So in the gallery, if you go there, you'll find there's a wall, and you can write a note to maybe someone you'd like to remember that goes along with that poem. And then the second poem I submitted is a poem I performed with some slam teams in the past, and I'm really fond of it. And it's called Catalog of Thanksgiving, so you can find a video of that as well.
Thank you. Ben, how about you?
So I set up a tent where I put a binder with a monologue I wrote. It was called A Moment to Connect. And it's kind of about this person rambling on about how they wish they could connect and talk to more people in society. And then it prompts a question about, what would you ask a stranger sitting in a park? And then I left area for people to respond in the binder and write responses.
Yeah. And Frankie?
So I submitted my original music. In the gallery, I put up some draft photos for a potential album cover and a QR code that would take you to a YouTube playlist of some of the works I put out there so far, and it's been a great experience learning and growing through this cohort.
It was so interesting, the variety of art forms from the applicants. I mean, my area is in music. Frankie's part of the music department, but it ventured out into other departments. And we ended up, I'm totally biased, but we ended up with a really spectacular cohort. And I'm just curious from your perspective, Caroline, when you were first meeting them through their medium, what was that like?
Well, in the spirit of it, I, as a matter of fact, really quickly separated the work from their biographies, and to the point that I completely forgot we were at Whitworth calling them Artist 1, Artist 2, Artist 3, and et cetera. And so it was really, I just dove right in to just really trying to be inside of their work as well as the Whitworth women. So it was, honestly, I walked into the art exhibit in true fashion for myself. I tend to, I hold a lot of water, just burst into tears because it was just so nice to all of a sudden have the humans connected to the work.
So when you first came on board for the cohort, you knew you were going to be working with Dr. Young, but it wasn't fully clear that your work was going to be shared in Whitworth. When that was shared with you, what did that mean, or what did that feel like? Any of you want to respond on that?
Yeah, that was super exciting. I got a little nervous at first when I heard because it made it so much more real, but once I processed it, I just was so excited to see their responses, and yeah, immediately wrapped me up in it.
Yeah. How about you, Frankie or Alex?
It definitely, at first glance was like, wow, this is a lot different than I was expecting, and I kind of loved it in that it made me go in with little to no expectation, knowing my art's out there, it's out of my work, whatever comes back. I hope that people can be moved and inspired by it, and so it was a really unique experience in that.
I'm just curious for you as artists. I mean, myself, so much of it's always tied to your name or your likeness. I mean, it's very rare we get to put our art out there just as itself. But in this experience, that was one of the goals, that it was really just going to be about the art itself. How did that feel for you? Was that different from things you've experienced? Was it empowering in any way? Was it jarring?
I mean, I think it was really beautiful for me. I was actually just talking with Caroline about this earlier, but early on with these two particular poems, I made the decision that they needed to exist out in the world, maybe a slightly different way than some other things that I've written. I think as a poet, sometimes you're just off submitting stuff to magazines, and maybe a couple hundred people will read it, and it's like a very self-selected audience. But I've always felt like with these two poems, I don't know, the heart of these poems really, I think, lives within a larger space, and they're two poems that I wrote really not only for my friends and family, but to exist sort of in a wider public space. And so to hear that the woman with Whitworth had been able to respond to our work, I think was just a really beautiful moment of I don't know, it was like having this really beautiful heart-to-heart conversation. And I think, reading their letters and their work in response to the artwork that we did was just, I don't know, just a really beautiful, moving moment. So,
thank you for that. Thank you for that. Will you share what our cohort did last night together?
Yes, after the exhibit
Yes.
and reception. So we read, actually, we spent yesterday and early, I think I have to kind of back up, in the room together, just reading the Whitworth work in the round, much the way we did at Whitworth, where we read all of their work in the round before we kind of had conversations about it. And then we had to go sort of this big public event and do all these other things. And it was going to be the last time that all of us were going to be in the same room at the same time. And I wanted everybody to have a minute to just write the community letter back to Whitworth. And because Whitworth wrote a community letter back to up here to Ole Miss, And it was just nice. We went back to the house and sat in a room that just does not have enough light in it. It was this kind of like weird like seance moment. And everybody, I just typed, everybody gave me sentences, and the letter's really, really beautiful. And because we now have a Google document where everybody can kind of, finesse it up. But I think it's essentially done.
How was that for you, working as a group, crafting something that was then going to go back? You won't be with it, but your words will be there.
I think the first time we were all just kind of rambling off ideas, and Caroline was typing, and it was kind of funny. She wrote back what we had after 5 minutes. We all kind of looked at each other and were like, we wrote that? Like, okay. And we were all a little like, wow, this is actually coming together quite nicely. And it was really cool. And when we talked about last night how this doesn't have to be like a conversation there and back. This can be a continuous conversation, for throughout the weeks and months and years. And so that's a really cool thing.
So I'm going to put you guys on the spot, not that I haven't already, but we'll continue. How is this experience different from what happens in the classroom in any way? And not saying one's good or bad, just different. How is it different?
I think immediately what comes to my mind is just your group of peers is so much different. Because in the classroom, I'm a freshman, so I'm used to being with mostly freshmen, but now I'm with graduate students and seniors and a faculty member, and that experience has been incredible. And it's a drastic difference from the classroom, I think.
Interesting perspective. Thank you for that. Frankie or Alex?
Yeah, I think like in addition to sort of being this like anti-hierarchical space, like it's also a space where I just feel like oftentimes I think in a classroom, like we're working towards maybe a final paper or a project, or when I'm teaching, it's like, there are expected sort of course outcomes. And I think it's really wonderful to be in this space where we're sort of all in a room and we have like all of this wonderful like, community that like opportunity to build community with each other, and also like engage with, outside work from Whitworth, and think about like what can we build from this, like with each other, and sort of talking to these other people in this other space. So it's like the opportunity to build something without sort of like any sort of fixed deadline or like, kind of like preordained like end result in mind, which is really nice.
Well said, well said. Curious for each of you, not to go to a product mentality, but how is this informing you as an artist, or how is it leading towards maybe the next thing?
I have kind of an example.
Sure.
With the monologue I wrote, one of the women in the prisons wrote a monologue back to me, and she challenged my monologue. So she challenged the perspective of the person, and she, told him he was being a hypocrite. And that immediately made me, it was really wonderful, yeah.
That's great.
And it immediately made me want to write another monologue from that new perspective. And I honestly think responding to those works and making that's going to be my biggest takeaway from that is
what a gift!
Creating off of those women's work, because it was incredible, yeah.
Wow. Frankie or Alex? They're so polite! No.
So I had a couple of the works I submitted. Dr. Young reached out and asked if I could submit a few more lyrics that she could take, and one of the pieces called Little Gray Cottage that I wrote on a plane to a track meet in about 15 minutes and just kind of put it on the back burner seemed to be one that the Whitworth women really responded to, and so that's definitely been one that I've been like, probably gonna have to go back and record that now and then send her a copy and get their opinions on that too. And it's been really cool because it's like sometimes when you create things as an artist, you have your own self-standard, and for me, that didn't seem like something that I was super like, man, this is really some of my best work, but it's what a lot of the community responded well to. And so it's one of those, it's even if I don't see it as prominently, it definitely has that community aspect that deserves then that further attention. So yeah.
Interesting. Curious, Alex, how will this experience inform your teaching?
Yeah, I feel like when I am in the classroom, like I'm always about sort of building a community space. So something I do like in the first week of my class is I have my students set community guidelines, and they're the people to determine what those things are. And it's, I think, really wonderful to like see how that takes shape. And I think just like I don't know. I think just like maybe even finding ways to like give them more agency and like bring their imagination into, you know, whatever writing assignment we're doing. Like I'm thinking with the end of the semester in Writing 101, we have this multimodal project. So just thinking about sort of like what possibilities like of things might they create, maybe not just individually, but with each other for that project.
Wonderful. I mean, when I hear you talk, when I spend time with you, just the thing that, I don't know, radiates through my mind is just like, it's so loud, is the power of the humanities. And I think so often they're misunderstood, they're either misconstrued, or they're used in ways that don't even make sense. And you bring such clarity, you through your work, all of you through this experience of the power of what the humanities can serve as an individual with a community. What do you believe is the most powerful part of the humanities?
I think we take it for granted. A lot of people just assume that people have the time and space to. People act like it's a privilege, I think, to explore what the only way I can think about the humanities, because I don't really love the term, because I can't punch it on the street. I don't know what it looks like, but I know that we should study and understand what it means to be human. And what I love about this as a category of classes is we get to kind of take a minute and step out of ourselves and say, like, what does it mean to be a human from a philosophical point of view, or to embody a historian trying to make sense, because they're all narratives, and it's what we do all day long. And one of the things I learned loud and clear in television, and I think it's transparent to everyone today, is that humans we're moved and we are guided by narrative. We tell stories, and facts are not the things that make people stand up and take action. It's storytelling. And so I think the humanities, it's an essential thing to always remind ourselves we are human. I was telling you earlier, I had a student and I sent them off to see a film about an incarceration theater program. And his response was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time, because he described it as he said this was really a human experience. And I'm like, what are you doing the rest of your life? Like, isn't everything a human experience? But I don't think we're necessarily at that place in time anymore.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's really hard for anybody. I don't think it's specific to a generation. I think it's just across the board. We as a society, get on a soapbox for a second, but we as a society, we're so disengaged in so many ways. And I think now more than ever, these types of experiences and the things that each of us, whether you consider yourself an artist or not, or consider yourself a creative or not, there's something that each of us can and should bring to the table. And the more that we can connect to one another as human beings, we create more moments of understanding. So I just want to say thank you. I'm getting misty. Doesn't take much from me either. You're in good company.
I'm a fan.
I just want to thank you for being vulnerable and willing to put yourself out there and to really step into this space of some things were certain, some things were unknown, but you made it your own as an individual and a group. I want to thank you for taking that Zoom with Dr. Starkey and I about this idea of coming to the University of Mississippi. And even though we've got a big rival game coming this weekend between our institutions, we can collaborate in other ways, and one of those being the power of the humanities. So thank you for being here. Also, I want to thank all of our supporters of LMR on campus, the College of Liberal Arts, the Department of Music, the Isom Center for Women and Gender Studies. A huge shout out to Kevin Cozart and Teresa Starkey. You are beautiful humans, and I really enjoy working with you. I want to thank our loyal viewers and our supporters. We're running a fundraising campaign right now. If you feel so compelled to give monetarily, it will be welcomed, and it will be used very efficiently. It will inform future programming that benefits our students and the community at large. I want to also thank very intentionally my colleague who collaborates with me beautifully on the Living Music Resource, Brady Bramlett. Let's put our hands together for Brady. You know, individually we can do small things, but when we work collaboratively, we can do great things. And this LMR team really is a dream team, and I want to give shout outs to the students who worked so hard to put all of this together. Ben Curry, Maya Taylor, Isabel Goad, and Benton Donahue. A round of applause for them. The music research revolution continues. Until next time, keep edutaining. Edutain, edutain. All right.